When I arrived at the airport, I was told to wait at passport control until everyone else had left. Then 2 policemen pulled my jacket over my head, so I couldn't see anything. They shoved me into a car and drove off. I had no idea where we were going.
They took me to a very crowded place. There were about 800 women there. It was a jail, but they told us it was a school.
You can't interview people here. We've gotten many negative reports. If the world remains silent, the Chinese government will reach its goal. The Uyghur, Kazakh and the Kyrgyz people will be wiped out, physically as well as culturally.
Tahir Mutallab Kahiri is a university lecturer in Germany. For many years, the only remaining link to his family have been a few academic texts, books written by his father, Mutallab Siddiq Kahiri, a respected Uyghur linguist and long-standing member of the Communist Party. In 2017, Tahir Kahiri's father suddenly disappeared. Authorities accused him of spreading ethnic hatred.
The party has the right to decide who is a professor and who is a criminal. My father was a professor and a researcher. He was hard-working, and so the party allowed him to do this work. And now the party has made him a criminal.
Around that time, China began the mass construction of prisons and re-education camps in Xinjiang, its westernmost region. According to estimates, more than 1 million Uyghurs, Kazakhs and other minorities have been detained there. This was the start of an unprecedented campaign against Muslim minorities that would reach far beyond China's borders. A campaign that many, including the US government, call a genocide. China claims it's merely combating extremism. Gulzira Aulhan is an ethnic Kazakh originally from Xinjiang. She emigrated to Kazakhstan, but returned in 2017 to visit relatives. At the border, she was detained and sent to a camp. The minorities in China's far west, seen by Beijing as restive, were to be re-educated to become more Chinese.
They made us repeat Chinese words we didn't know. If we forgot them, they struck us with electric shock devices. They'd aim for our heads so that the wounds were concealed by our hair and our husbands wouldn't notice later. Here, they would have been visible.
We go to get a closer look at one of the camps where Gulzira says she was detained. Following an international outcry, China said the camps were vocational training centers and that most people had already graduated. The complex in Yining County was built in 2017. Satellite imagery shows that security measures seem to have been subsequently scaled back. Walls were replaced with fences. The gate is closed, but it doesn't look like a high-security facility, and most of the internees appear to be young. They walk in orderly lines and are frisked before entering the building. Gulzira told us that some of her fellow inmates had been sent to regular prisons. On the outskirts of Yining, we find a high-security complex with watchtowers, built around the same time.
Stop! If you take pictures here, we will have to take measures against you.
Gulzira Aulhan is one of the few people who managed to leave China and talk about her ordeal. Besides psychological and physical torture, she recalls the detainees were routinely administered injections.
After the injections, some women stopped having their periods. Those who were still menstruating were given just one pad, which they had to use for 2 or 3 days. We talked quite openly about it. We stopped being ashamed.
Forced sterilization and birth control measures have led to a drop in birth rates among Muslim minorities, one of the reasons why observers say the repressive measures add up to genocide. People with ties abroad have been targeted in particular. In Xinjiang, Asa Emin was a shop owner selling imported foods and halal products. Today, we meet him in a rented apartment in Germany. In 2015, he was returning home from a business trip to Malaysia when he was stopped at the airport and taken to a detention center.
They took me into a room. There, they sat me down at a metal table and they handcuffed my legs and my arms to it. Then they tightened the cuffs until I could no longer move. It hurt. I stayed in this position for 2 days.
He says he was never told why he was arrested. Asa spent a month in detention. His documents show that he was suspected of endangering state security. Then, suddenly, he was released, under one condition. He had to agree to work for state security.
I thought I just had to stay in touch with them, but I didn't intend to really work for them.
After his father's detention, Tahir Kahiri was no longer able to get in touch with his family. Now he has followed in his father's footsteps and teaches Uyghur language and literature. This semester he is teaching a class on Uyghur pop music. Due to the pandemic, his classes are held online. Today's lesson is about Ablajan Aoud Ayub, one of Xinjiang's most successful stars.
You brought up two of his main themes. One is love of one's homeland, and the other theme you mentioned is the collective memory of the Uyghurs.
The singer Ablajan Aoud Ayub has since disappeared, as have Kahiri's father and a large part of the Uyghur cultural elite.
I feel angry, but I try to control my emotions, stay humane and peaceful.
Kahiri's hometown Kashgar, the cultural capital of the Uyghurs. Many historic monuments have been restored, transformed into tourist attractions. But inside the ancient city, traditional life is under attack. All the mosques have been closed, some minarets removed. Prayer rooms now hold businesses. The rooms dedicated to ablution have been turned into public toilets. One mosque was even turned into a bar, which since has been closed. After his detention, Asa Emin regularly met with a Secret Service agent who became his handler. He was allowed to continue traveling abroad. He says nothing specific was asked of him, and he maintains that he has never informed against anyone. But it's impossible to check these claims. About 1 year later, he was detained again. This time he was released with a specific request: to spy on a young Uyghur in Turkey. Asa left for Istanbul, where he defected and went public with his story. Then he received a phone call from his handler.
He said, "So you've decided to appear on this webcast and talk, but you know that your family members are here in China."
Since then, many of his relatives have disappeared. 5 siblings were arrested. Asa's oldest brother was sentenced to 25 years in jail. He cannot reach any of his relatives by phone. It was fellow Uyghurs who passed on the heavy news.
Now the Chinese government has separated us forever. Our life wasn't bad. I was in good health, doing all right financially. It was a happy life.
An American colleague and I tried to visit the place where he lived. We are followed closely and constantly harassed. The villages in the area seem eerily empty. Many houses have been sealed by the authorities. Before reaching Asa's village, we are stopped.
You can't just walk around here and interview people. The world is watching Xinjiang. There have been some negative reports.
18 months after his father's disappearance, Tahir Kahiri finally received word from him. Looking old and frail, he denied on video chat that he had been detained and said he had spent the last month in hospital.
My son, you must not believe these lies. You must keep your mouth shut and publicly renounce the accusations you have made and clean up the dirt that you have left. This will be the best for us. It makes me sad that he had to spend our entire conversation defending his abusers.
In Kashgar, we tried to visit Tahir Kahiri's father. He lives on the university campus. As the police appear, I say I want to meet him.
We don't have the authority to let you in.
Can't he consent to the interview personally?
You have to apply through the Foreign Office. One day I asked my handler, so many people have been detained and so many more disappear every day. When will it all end? And he answered, America did not become what it was without shedding a lot of blood. Much more is going to happen here.
Asa also remembers that his handler met with him once in Istanbul and seemed to be operating freely in Turkey. Asa decided to move to Germany, where he's waiting for his refugee status to be approved. Guzira now lives in Istanbul. She too is afraid of China's reach.
I still wake up with nightmares of being back in the Chinese internment camp. I see images and memories of the interrogations, the beatings and the things they did to women there. It still haunts me.
Tahir Kahiri's father does seem to be back home again, though his condition is not very clear. Tahir Kahiri can call his parents every 2 weeks, but after 2 minutes the line is cut.
The Chinese government has made me a lonely man, a sad, lonely man in exile.
It is his work that keeps him going, preserving the Uyghur culture.